Coming up next on AVID Achievers, we will talk about what happens after the college acceptances roll in. Hello and welcome to AVID Achievers. I'm your host, Dot Arida, coordinator of AVID. Today on AVID Achievers, we will talk with two AVID Site Coordinators, Kellie Goforth from North County High School and Brad Bittinger from Southern High School. You may remember them on a previous show about the college application process. Today, we're going to talk about what happens after those acceptances start coming in. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Dot.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So as students complete their applications and they've submitted, what do we expect next?
I mean, in the next couple weeks, sometimes months, the acceptances will start coming in. Sometimes they have financial aid attached to them. Sometimes they'll come a little bit later. But really, it's just a matter of collecting everything, all the acceptances, and seeing what offers come from which schools and making the best decision.
And acceptances can come in a lot of different forms now. It used to be that you would expect that really big envelope in the mail, but now the envelope might be a lot smaller, or they might be getting their acceptances in an email, or they might need to log into the portal on the school's website and they can see whether they've been accepted or they're missing pieces of their application.
Oh, that's good. So if you are expecting to hear back from a college and you haven't heard back yet, maybe your next step is to go to that portal and make sure they got everything. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, especially if you have friends that are applying to the same schools and they're hearing back and you're not, it might be the reason why.
Mm-hmm. So you said some schools you can hear back in weeks. So there are schools that are really that fast.
Some schools, if you apply early enough, it's days. I've had kids apply on a Friday and know by Monday sometimes, so yeah.
Oh, wow, that's exciting. So when the acceptances come in, you said something about offers. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So the schools are going to offer financial aid packages, depending on what side, or if it's a public or private school. Most of the time, private schools are going to give a lot more money, whereas public schools, their tuition is already pretty low, so they don't give a whole lot more money on top. Some schools also will wait until you file the FAFSA, and they'll come out with more financial aid offers in the spring. So it all depends on the school and the timing of when you apply as well.
And when you get that letter from your schools with acceptances, there's need-based aid and merit-based aid. And a lot of acceptances, well, maybe not a lot, but a few acceptances will come with a letter that has instant merit-based aid on it, where it's like, you've been accepted to so-and-so college, and here's your merit scholarship of $15,000. And that would be based on a student's GPA or their SAT scores, because if you have a certain GPA and SAT score combination, some schools will take a certain amount off of that tuition. And that'll come in that initial letter. And then when Brad was talking about the FAFSA, sometimes or oftentimes there's an additional letter that comes out later, even months after the acceptance, that has the official outline of the student's full student aid with the FAFSA on it and with the merit-based scholarships.
Oh, so that's interesting. So the letters come in. So now I have a couple of different offers. How do you recommend students to compare the different offers from the different schools?
I use an Excel spreadsheet or some variation of an Excel spreadsheet. I really tell the kids it's really like buying a car, right? So if college is the car, you're going to talk about, if a car has a trade-in value or whatever you have, right? So the schools are going to have their sticker price, and then the money that they're going to give either through scholarships or grants, and then you take that money off the top, and then whatever's left over, the net price, and really comparing that net price across all the schools that you've gotten into, right? So I mean, it's pretty simple. Just take, what you have minus what they've given you, and then you have the need left over, and you can really compare, apples to oranges when it comes to different schools.
Mm-hmm. And you said some schools then later amend that offer based on your FAFSA and what you've submitted.
Right. So I really recommend for kids, if they're getting accepted in October, November, December, they don't have to make a decision about where they want to go until May 1st. So really, we want to push kids to apply early, but not necessarily make a decision about where they want to go until the spring, because they don't know what their aid packages look like. And if you're saying that you're going to commit to a school in December or January very early, they're not going to give you anything else because they know you're already committed. So if you wait a little bit, wait for your FAFSA, wait for a little bit more aid, and you can really compare what the bottom line price of what it's going to be.
And I would say that that letter comes around February-ish, that official award letter. And what's really cool is that then once you have all of your award letters in, you can call a school and say, hey, school A is giving me this much money, but I'm really interested in your school. Would you be willing to match it? And I've heard students that have gotten yeses from that, and students that have gotten no's, and then the worst thing that can happen is that you get the no and you're in the same situation before you called and asked.
That's really good advice. And I don't think I really thought about the waiting to accept, because we do push our students to apply early, get that off their plate at the beginning of the senior year. But we really need to be cautious about making that decision until we have all of the information. And that might take a lot longer than students anticipated.
Yeah, and there's a financial best fit and an academic best fit and then a social best fit. And in an ideal world, those three things line up, but sometimes the financial best fit isn't necessarily the social best fit, and you need to make your decision based on that too.
So I know as a parent, I keep telling my senior, like, you have to feel like you're going to be at home where you're going to end up. So when we talk about, that social fit, that's the piece, right? Like, when you show up on campus, are you going to be comfortable living there?
Right.
And this is going to become your new community, and you have to make sure that that's going to be a comfortable fit for you.
And sometimes the trade-off is the higher price is worth that social fit. I would never say to a student to compromise on the academic fit, because that's the main goal, is that you're getting the major for the career that you want to have. And so we want to make sure that the school has our major, but also is a good financial fit.
Right, and if we're talking, like, most of the time we spend fall semester applying and waiting for acceptances. In the spring, they have a good 4 to 5 months before they need to make that final decision. And there's no penalty for waiting. So if they push it all the way until May 1st, that's okay. The best thing they can do in that time is go visit the schools, because now it's real. Now they can be a student. They've gotten an acceptance letter to the schools, and they have a finite list of schools they want to see. In junior year and even early senior year, any school is a possibility. So there's so many things to consider, but now they've applied to these 3 to 5 schools, and they've got acceptances from these 3 to 5 schools. So these are the ones that we're actually going to see and narrow it down. And once you step foot on campus, a lot of times you just know, you just feel it, you just know. So having it be real, like, I can be a real student here in my senior year, and then putting themselves in a student's shoes as an actual student, not just as a potential student, but I am a student here, right? And having them make that decision afterwards is really beneficial to everybody.
I really do like that idea of, now you can do this, and how does it feel now that it's really real and you can really make that choice. I like that advice. And what are some of the things you tell the kids to investigate when they go back for that new visit, right? So I've been here, I've seen the buildings, I've talked about, what campus life is like, but what are some of the things you tell them to look at now with a new lens?
Definitely the living situation. So if the student is going to live at home or live on campus, maybe they would want to practice their commute if they decide they're going to be a commuter student, and does that seem reasonable? And thinking about, like, what times they would be leaving, and maybe choose a time when it would fit the schedule, and see what that commute looks like. The living situation, the food, making sure that the department that they're going to be in is somewhere where they would be happy, asking about academic supports that schools have, and asking about what job placements they have after they're going to graduate or leading up to that senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the things that we've done in junior year include, like, looking for majors and stuff. So the schools they've applied to already have all the things that they want academically. Now it's time to see, like, this is where I'm actually going to live for the next however many years or semesters or whatever. So getting that real feel, I mean, absolutely, all those things for sure.
And I think
food is obviously number one, because
they're teenagers.
You gotta eat 3 times a day.
And they're
Try the food.
teenagers. So I know at one of the schools that my son was considering, we actually went and met with the academic chair for his major. And I found that to be pretty beneficial, right? So you're actually in the building where most of their classes are going to happen. We actually got to see some classes in progress. And that academic advisor got to give us like very specific examples, like, you know, when you're student teaching, if you play on a sports team, this is how we accommodate for that. So things like that I think are really important too, like actually getting to meet some of the people that are going to be in the department where you're going to be spending your time.
Right.
Awesome. So, all right, so we've got our offers from our colleges. We know we're in that decision-making time. So now it's time to start looking for scholarships, right?
Well, you can start looking for scholarships at any point. There are scholarships available to 9th grade students, 8th grade students. It's really a numbers game, and the more scholarships you apply to, the more likely you are to receive one. So there's no reason to wait until you get your first acceptance to start thinking about those scholarships.
Yeah, and if you're applying early to scholarships, it really gives you a sense of what they are looking for. And then by the time you are a junior or a senior, hopefully you've kind of curated your resume to be more well-rounded or to fit more things. You know, if I have a lot of students that that realize that certain scholarships or even schools are looking for, you know, sports, but also service and also, you know, getting involved or getting a job. So they can think about that as they go from being a 14-year-old freshman all the way up to being, you know, a senior, and they can kind of do things that are going to build their resume and give them a way better chance of paying for college, right? So a kid who has very little on their resume, strong academically maybe, but their resume is pretty pointed, let's say, it's not very well-rounded, they might not have as many opportunities as a kid who's branched out and tried a lot of things, you know, or vice versa.
And a lot of the questions on the scholarship application might be to show either creativity, leadership, or community impact. And I think those are the 3 most common questions I see in a scholarship application, and overcoming obstacles.
Okay, so where do you recommend students look to find scholarships?
I think the best opportunity is the more local the scholarship, the better opportunity they have to earn money. There are big national scholarships, but that means that there's a lot of applicants. So you really have to be at the top of the food chain on those to win. So you know, the more local they are, the better. And if they fit a student's criteria or demographics or background, or, you know, sometimes they have scholarships that are for kids who have overcome a specific obstacle, right? So if you can find those, that's really your best bet, because you're really narrowing down the applicant pool. You know, I'd rather buy a lottery ticket against 10 people versus a lottery ticket against 1 million people, because I have better chances of winning. So if I can find things that are specific to me, my family, my background, things that I've done in my life, my experiences, things like that, then I'm going to have a way better chance of earning myself some money, for sure.
Yeah, North County has our community has a Women of Linthicum scholarship, so it's really great to get all of our female students to apply to that Women of Linthicum scholarship. I think actually they just recently opened it up to male students as well, but again, you have to be from that community and live in that community, and so it narrows down that pool. In my 11 years of teaching AVID, I've only had 1 or 2 students win one of those scholarships that you can find on those big scholarship websites like Unigo or FastWeb or scholarships.com. I think I've had about 2 kids win that $500 scholarship from there. But our kids win the local scholarships very often, and our counseling departments in AACPS house all of those scholarships, and they keep them up to date on Naviance as well. So students can check Naviance for lists of local and community and national scholarships, but they can also go into the counseling department to find that information as well.
Yeah, each community usually has their own community centers, like Roritan or Knights of Columbus, elks, moose, other animals, right? So they have these lodges. They always have, you know, these are service organizations that give money to kids who have similar interests, right? So there's, in every community pretty much across the country, there's those, but they only serve the local community. Anne Arundel County, like the Chamber of Commerce, things like that, they have their own scholarships as well. So looking around at different government organizations, different private organizations, they usually have money to provide to students.
So tell me a little bit about, I know that all high schools now have a college and career advisor. So how can that college and career advisor be leveraged by students to help them in this process?
Our college and career advisor has been working with students individually on feedback on their resumes. She has read college essays for the students, and it's really easy to get in and get an appointment with them to get that one-on-one feedback that when you're sitting in the classroom, you might not be able to get as in-depth as a one-on-one meeting with the college and career advisor.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, one of the things that kids can really help themselves to have is an essay or two when it comes to scholarships. If they have a strong essay that they've written for college applications, they can use that for a lot of different scholarships as well. Some kids really put off the writing process when it comes to that, but if they have, just if they can get 2 or 3 done, just completely done, most of the time they're between life experiences and whatever they write about, they can fit that into other scholarships. So it's not like they have to write something brand new from scratch for every scholarship they apply to. But just a side note, most of the time, the scholarships that are worth your time are the ones that require some amount of work. So for us, I don't know about Kelly, but for me, I don't accept a scholarship that doesn't require an essay or sometimes a blog post or some type of work, right? They want to know about the kid. If the scholarship just asks for name, phone number, and email address, I mean, what are they really? They're not asking for anything. They're just looking for information. So,
so that's more of like a raffle than
right.
a scholarship.
Yeah.
Basically, it'd be better serving your time to just buy a lottery ticket at that point, right? So anytime they ask for a specific essay or something you actually have to do, they want to know more about you as a student or a person. Those are worth your time.
Okay. So now we get to May. We've made that decision. So we know where we're going now. What are your recommended next steps for your kids?
I think they can do a lot of research on what they're going to need to take to school with them. What are they going to be living on campus? What kind of materials will they need to be successful in class? And that's really dependent on what major they're going to have. And are they going to use a binder when they get to college, or are they going to use a spiral notebook? Does their school allow students to bring in computers into the classroom, or do they have teachers that say no computers during class time at all? And so there's a lot of things that students have to be prepared to purchase to be ready for college too.
I think also what kids don't expect is how to meet new people that are like, I mean, you're going to a place where everybody's a stranger, so meeting new people is something they haven't ever had to do, right? So just practicing that, introducing yourself, it's really weird, but I think it really helps kids to be able to do that, because the first time you do it obviously is really awkward, right? But the more they practice it and having that time to practice, and they also have time in between when they get accepted or when they make their final decision and when they go. They have a few months in there to try to get to know their roommate, possibly, even if it's through social media or virtually or whatever. But if they can meet up with that person, maybe establish some rules for the room or whatever they can do, just establishing that relationship before day one of school is really beneficial too.
I always tell my students that a compliment and an open-ended question work really nicely for meeting someone new for the first time, because it sets them kind of at ease, and then it allows the person to respond and do a follow-up. And so a compliment, then an open-ended question is a good way to meet somebody that you're sitting next to.
Yeah, I try to get my kids to think about, especially during senior year, I tell them to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Just use the entire year to try new things, meet new people, sit with somebody different in the cafeteria, just little things that really make a difference. Because when you get to college, it's going to be that all day, every day, right? So you got to get over the awkwardness. You got to get over the uncomfortableness of being, sometimes by yourself or sometimes with strangers or whatever. So practicing that is helpful.
So I know that both of you have continuing relationships with students who have left our AVID program and are now in college. Are there strategies or skills that your students report back that they're really using in college?
Yeah, for sure. I think every student leaves with their own style of taking notes, which I think they hone in on when they get to college, and they can really put it to use when they're expected to. Organization. I have multiple kids that were very much against using an agenda in high school that are very much for using an agenda in college because they need it. Because they're balancing a lot of different things and a lot of different assignments. communication as well. I mean, they're constantly communicating with professors, so we're taking time in class to teach them how to write professional emails and talk to their professors about what they need, and just practicing those skills as well.
My favorite text is, you were right, Ms. Goforth, a tutorial is really just a study group. And I've gotten that one. Last week I got a text from a student who's applying to grad school right now, and she had said, I wish I was back in AVID so that you could help me with my grad school application. And that was pretty cool. Yeah.
So I think for, for students, that the value of that agenda, because we try to tell them in middle school and high school, like, you need to use this agenda, you need to keep track of your assignments. But I think what they really need to realize is that on that first day, you're going to get a syllabus in your class, and then it is your job to go and put those dates somewhere and then not miss them. So your professor isn't going to send you an email and say, hey, remember, you have that paper due on Wednesday. Like, they've given you that information, and now you have to meet it. And then teaching them, to put sports practices or movie night, or, I'm going home this weekend, and teaching kids to look at, weeks and months at a time instead of days at a time, I think is so important. And unfortunately, I feel like we have kids that get to college and say, oh my gosh, I wish I had practiced this better. So I definitely agree that's something that they definitely need.
And even when they say that, though, they are listening, and sometimes it'll click later, and they'll be like, oh, that's what Mr. Bittinger was talking about. That's what Ms. Goforth was talking about. It makes more sense now that I'm living it in this experience.
So what advice do you have for the students once they get to campus? So they're there that first day, mom and dad leave them behind. What advice do you give them?
Don't go home.
As I have two things. One of them is don't go home. Get involved in everything that you can that's positive. In that first month of school, the school puts on as much as they can for the kids, because they know homesickness is real. Even though every high school junior and senior denies that they'll ever be homesick, it is a real thing. When your parents drive away and they leave you there, and you're, it's like it's summer camp for 4 months, but it's hard. It's really difficult. So, getting involved and meeting new people, the more connections that you can make to professors, students, RAs, anybody, right? Those are great things, because you're very much anchored to where you come from. You're very much anchored to your high school. You played sports there. You played music. You did drama. You did all the things, and now you have no roots at all at this new place. So the way you make those roots, the way you make connections, is to be there and to get involved in things, right? On all these positive things. But going home won't. It's like you're not allowing yourself to establish any roots there. So as much as you want to go home, as much as your parents will allow it, you don't want to do that. You want to stay, and you want to kind of push your way through it, because it'll make you stronger in the end, and you'll make a new connection in a new place and be that much more mature.
And the homesickness is very real. It happened to me. It happened to Brad. And just making sure that students know that it's going to happen and it's okay. And in the age of social media, everyone is posting, their very best selves. And so you might be looking at your high school friends online and saying, like, everybody is having a way better college experience than I am. But you have to remember that it's not the 100% truth of the story, and just being okay with knowing that you're in a new situation and that eventually it will feel like a different home.
Right. And I think that some kids, they forget that my friends from back home and my family, they're going to be there, right? So even if you were back home, it's still not the same, though, because you're not in high school anymore. You know what I mean? Your friends have also moved on, and they're doing their own thing as well. So it's not the same as it was, even though you're in a different place and you can't see it. The same things are kind of still happening behind the scene, but it's not the same. So being in a different place is an opportunity, to grow and to move and challenge yourself in a different way.
And I think too, when we force our students to stay on campus, right? That first weekend, they want to run home. They want to come, but I forgot, I need to do my laundry.
Right.
They want to come home. But forcing them to stay on campus makes them have to reach out. And everybody else on campus is feeling the same way.
Sure. Yeah.
So all of the freshmen there, and the first year students are feeling the same way, and they're all looking to make connections. So it's a great time to make those connections.
You could almost argue that the most important things that you'll learn at college happen probably within the first 2 months. And right, those things aren't learned in the classroom. Those things are learned by detaching yourself from one situation and putting yourself and trying to survive in a different situation. You know, not only survive, I guess, but thrive, you know, making friends and doing things that you've never had to do before. Everything is brand new experience in college, right? Whether it's your first time making a meal or washing clothes or shaking a hand and introducing yourself to a stranger or whatever it is, everything is new.
And it's fun, and it's scary, and it's the best, and it's really scary and really fun.
Okay, so one last question then. So what about our kids? We have a lot more kids that are going to live at home and commute to college, whether it's to a community college or a four-year school, but to save a little bit of money, they're going to stay home. What recommendations do you have for those kids to make connections?
So there's still community activities at the schools, and they do have things specifically for commuter students. And it's just click on that search bar in your college website and type in commuter student, and a bunch of resources will come up that are tailored specifically to that type of student. And thinking about, you know, how they're spending their free time. Are they also working and having a job and going to school and driving back and forth, and thinking about the cost of gas, and there's a lot of things to consider, but you can still have that college experience while living at home. Just putting yourself out there, it can be a little bit more challenging because you don't have the dorms and living where everybody else is living, but maybe doing your homework on campus, doing your homework in the library, doing your homework in a coffee shop, just hanging out on campus, maybe purposefully planning your classes so it gives you 2 hours on campus if you can to try new things and meet different people.
Yeah, I think it's a big mindset thing, because I think kids sometimes when they commute, they don't feel like they are a part of the community when they really are, or they could be, they could have the opportunity to. So just viewing it as not just a place where I go to class and do these things academically, but also this is like kind of like a second home. Even though I'm not living here, I spend my time here, just like high school was. You didn't live at high school either, but it definitely can become part of who you are.
Well, thank you so much for all of your advice today and your information. Your AVID students are very lucky to have you, and we're lucky to be able to glean some advice from you as well. So thank you for joining us today on AVID Achievers, and we'll see you next time.